In the quiet of the evening, where shadows softly play, a fairy tale wolf sheds his skin, gently drifting away, with a twinkle in his eye and a heart full of dreams. He waits for the Friday night glow, where the magic redeems. Oh, the wolf in the moonlight, he's found his true call, reading tales of wonder for one and for all. In a world of stars dancing, his spirit takes flight, with stories of beauty under the starlit night. He picks up a book, the pages worn and wise, every line a whisper under the vast skies, from far off lands where the wild things roam, to enchanted forests where the heart finds home. Oh, the wolf in the moonlight, he's found his true call, reading tales of wonder for one and for all. In a world of stars dancing, his spirit takes flight, with stories of beauty under the starlit night. With every word he reads, he casts a spell of peace, transporting all who listen to a land where joy won't cease. For in these fairy tales, amidst the laughter and tears, the wolf finds his solace, he conquers his fears. As the night grows deeper, he serenades the moon with melodies that linger, a soft and soothing tune in this sacred hour.
Hey everyone, it is Friday night. And of course, you know that means it's fairy tales. So I hope everyone has had a wonderful week. It's definitely time to relax and, get out of the rest of the work time. Generally, just, relax. What the hell happened to my window? Is it just me saying that? Because that was weird. Why did my chat window just jump out like that? I don't know. But anyway, it's Friday night, and it's gonna be fairy tales, because we've gone over a month without fairy tales on Friday night. That just is crazy to me, I gotta have my Friday night fairy tales. But what message am I getting? Oop. Okay, someone attempted making chips. Nice. Okay. But we are going to be back in the Violet Fairy book. I'm going to see how many stories I can get done in 2 hours. And if it goes a little over, yeah, it goes a little over because, yeah, fairy tales. I mean, who doesn't really like a good fairy tale? I mean, honestly. No one should outgrow them. Let me check a few more things on here. Like make sure that Kel's announcements are set back to the more fantastic as opposed to, I think I had her set to the crown drama again. And we are going to slip over to the library. Again, no cats to be seen. What the hell was that? Oh, an ad playing in my library sounds. Well, ain't that lovely? It was for college. But again, I went ahead and added the cat cam over here. Tried to make everything a little bit more spaced and necessary. I've been slowly trying to rework all of my scenes. Where? Oh, Twitch wonderful. That's just the wrong place. Okay. Get the little bit percenter done there. Not that it's important, but I am still trying to see if I can hit 500 followers this year. And I've been slowly getting up there. I'm up to 424. I think I started this year at 410. So, yeah, I'd say I'm making a little bit of progress. But yeah, fairy tales. I normally would wait until 9:10 to get started, but I really kind of want to get into them. We've got a lot of catching up to do. So, Cubs. This first story is going to be a little nonsensical, but the best fairy tales often are. Don't look for morals in this one. It may not have one. And if it does, we'll figure it out later. So, our first story for the night, for this fabulous Friday night of fairy tales. How a fish swam in the air and a hare in the water. Once upon a time, an old man and his wife lived together in a little village. They might have been happy if only the old woman had the sense to hold her tongue at proper times. But anything which might happen indoors, or any bit of news which her husband might bring in when he had been anywhere, had to be told at once to the whole village, and these tales were repeated and altered, till it often happened that much mischief was made, and the old man's back paid for it. One day he drove to the forest. When he'd reached the edge of it, he got out of his cart and walked beside it. Suddenly he stepped on such a soft spot and his foot sank in the earth. "Oh, what can this be?" thought he. "I'll dig a bit." So he dug and dug, and at last he came upon a little pot full of gold and silver. "Oh, what luck! Now, if only I knew how I could take this treasure home with me, but I can never hope to hide it from my wife, and once she knows of it, she'll tell all the world, and then I shall get into trouble." He sat down and thought over the matter for a long time, and at last he made a plan. He covered up the pot again with earth and twigs, and drove into town, where he bought a live pike and a live hare in the market. Then he drove back to the forest and hung the pike up at the very top of a tree, and he tied the hare in a fishing net and fastened it to the edge of a little stream, not troubling himself to think of how unpleasant a wet spot was likely to be to the hare. Then he got into his cart and trotted merrily home. "Wife," he cried, the moment he got indoors, "you can't think of what a good piece of luck has come our way." "What? What, dear husband? Do tell me all about it at once." "No, no, you'll just go off and tell everyone." "No, indeed. How can you think such things? For shame. If you like, I will swear never to." "Oh, well, if you are really in earnest, then listen." And he whispered in her ear, "I found a pot full of gold and silver in the forest. Hush." "And why didn't you bring it back?" "Because we will drive there together and bring it carefully back between us." So the man and his wife drove to the forest, and as they were driving along, the man said, "What strange things one hears, wife. I was told only the other day that fish will now live and thrive in the treetops, and that some wild animals spend their time in the water. Well, well, times are certainly changed." "Why, you must be crazy, husband. Dear, dear, what nonsense people do talk sometimes." "Nonsense indeed. Why, just look. Bless my soul, if there isn't a fish, a real pike, I do believe, up there in that tree." "Gracious!" cried his wife. "How did a pike get up there? It is a pike. You needn't attempt to say it's not. Can people have said what's true?" But the man only shook his head and shrugged his shoulders and opened his mouth and gaped as he saw what he really could not believe with his own eyes. "What are you standing staring at there, stupid?" said his wife. "Climb up the tree quick and catch the pike, and we'll cook it for dinner." The man climbed up the tree and brought down the pike, and they drove on. When they got near the stream, he drew up. "What are you staring at again?" asked his wife impatiently. "Drive on, can't you?" "Why, I seem to see something moving in that net I set. I'll just go down and see what it is." He ran to it, and when he had looked at it, he called to his wife, "Just look! Here's an actual 4-footed creature caught in the net. I do believe it's a hare." "Good heavens!" cried his wife. "How did the hare get into your net? It is a hare, you needn't say it isn't. After all, people must have said the truth." But her husband only shook his head and shrugged his shoulders as if he could not believe his own eyes. "Now what are you standing there for, stupid?" cried his wife. "Take up the hare. A nice fat hare is a dinner for a feast day." The old man caught up the hare, and they drove to the place where the treasure was buried. They swept the twigs away and dug up the earth, and took out the pot, and drove home again with it. And now the old couple had plenty of money and were cheery and comfortable. But the wife was very foolish. Every day she asked a lot of people to dinner and feasted them, till her husband grew quite impatient. He tried to reason with her, but she would not listen. "You've got no right to lecture me," said she. "We found the treasure together, and together we will spend it." Her husband took patience, but at length he said to her, "You may do as you please, but I shan't give you another penny." The old woman was very angry. "Oh, what a good-for-nothing fool to want to spend all the money himself! Just wait a bit and see what I shall do." Off she went to the governor to complain of her husband. "Oh, my lord, protect me from my husband. Ever since he found the treasure, there is no bearing him. He only eats and drinks and won't work, and he keeps all the money to himself." The governor took pity on the woman and ordered his chief secretary to look into the matter. The secretary called the elders of the village together and went with them to the man's house. Governor, said he, desires you to give me all that treasure you found into my care. The man shrugged his shoulders and said, What treasure? I know nothing about a treasure. What? How? You know nothing? Why, your wife has complained of you. Don't attempt to tell lies. If you don't hand over all the money at once, you will be tried for daring to raise treasure without giving due notice to the governor about it. Pardon me, Your Excellency, but what sort of treasure was supposed to have been? My wife must have dreamt it, and you gentlemen have listened to her nonsense. Nonsense indeed, broke in his wife. A kettle full of gold and silver. Do you call that nonsense? You are not in your right mind, dear wife. Sir, I beg your pardon. Ask her how it all happened, and if she convinces you, I'll pay for it with my life. This is how it all happened, Mr. Secretary, cried the wife. We were driving through the forest, and we saw Pike up on the top of a tree. What? A pike? shouted the secretary. Do you think you may joke with me, pray? Indeed, I'm not joking, Mr. Secretary. I'm speaking the bare truth. Now, you see, gentlemen, said their husband, how far you can trust her when she chatters like this. Chatter indeed! Perhaps you have forgotten, too, how we found the live hare in the river. Everyone roared with laughter, and even the secretary smiled and stroked his beard. And the man said, Come, wife, everyone is laughing at you. You see for yourself, gentlemen, how far you can believe her. Yes, indeed, said the village elders. It is certainly the first time we have heard of the hares thriving in water or fish among the treetops. The secretary could make nothing of it at all, and drove back to the town. The old woman was so laughed at that she had to hold her tongue and obey her husband after it all. And the man bought wares with a part of the treasure and moved into the town, where he opened a shop and prospered, and spent the rest of his days in peace. I will be right back after I figure out why the hell I'm getting text messages. Okay. And so
90% of
my
students make
mother
4.0
texted to
plus
see if I was
get
still up,
selected from universities like
because
Harvard,
apparently she was
Stanford,
needing my
other
help with
top 10
something, and
universities.
then the
Your
second
child
message
needs
was
these
that she had
three
already
key
taken care of it.
factors to get into an Ivy League or top 25 university. And it's not having a
This is
good
why I typically
GPA or
don't start
SAT score
streaming
that
until
gets
after
you.
9.
Top universities made SAT and ACT submissions optional, with
Normally,
over
they'd be in
100,000
bed by now.
plus applicants a year. As a parent, you know your child needs to stand out. Top
But
universities like
anyway,
Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, and others
welcome in
believe that
Guilty.
students who will have a successful
You can
career
still claim
after
first,
graduation.
because I don't think
This is
anyone
what
has.
gives a university its prestige. Universities are businesses at the end of the day, and if they have great alumni who become successful, it's the best form of marketing for the university. And we know this because we've guided thousands of students in over 40 states to get into the top 25 universities. And we know that there are three factors in the admission criteria that universities are looking for. And that's why we have a free webinar where we go over
Congrats!
three main
Yay!
factors
Okay.
that succeed ultimately to get into the top colleges. And we cover the important parts of college admissions that are overlooked. Why 90% of students with a 4.0 plus GPA are not accepted. What universities actually want in applications but never say. Seats are limited, so reserve your spot by picking.
So you getting ready for work, or just gonna hang around for a while? Oh, good lord.
How's it going?
Get in
Freaking YouTube ads. And for some reason, I can't install an ad blocker on OBS's browser. Waiting for the bus. Why didn't you feel like leaving on time? Ah, I know how that is. I pretty much sleep in my recliner anyway. 3 beds in this house, and I sleep in the recliner. Anyway, our next story for this fabulous Friday night of fairy tales. 2 in a sack. What a life that poor man led with his wife, to be sure. Not a day passed without her scolding him and calling his names, and indeed sometimes she would take the broom from behind the stove and beat him with it. He had no peace or comfort at all, and really hardly knew how to bear it. One day, when his wife had been particularly unkind and had beaten him black and blue, he strolled slowly into the fields, and as he could not endure to be idle, he spread out his nets. What kind of bird do you think he caught in his net? He caught a crane, and the crane said, "Let me go free, and I'll show myself grateful." The man answered, "No, my dear fellow, I shall take you home, and then perhaps my wife won't scold me so much." Then said the crane, "You'd better come with me to my house." And so they went to the crane's house. When they got there, what do you think the crane took from the wall? He took down a sack and said, "Two out of a sack." Instantly, 2 pretty lads sprang out of the sack. They brought in oak tables, which they spread with silken covers, and placed all sorts of delicious dishes and refreshing drinks on them. The man had never seen anything so beautiful in his life, and he was delighted. Then the crane said to him, "Now take this sack to your wife." The man thanked him warmly and took the sack and set out. His home was a good long way off, and as it was growing dark and he was feeling tired, he stopped to rest at his cousin's house by the way. The cousin had 3 daughters, who laid out a tempting supper, but the man would eat nothing, and said to his cousin, "Your supper is bad." "Oh, make the best of it," said she. But the man said only, "Clear away," and taking out his sack he cried, as the crane had taught him, "2 out of the sack!" And out came 2 pretty boys, who quickly brought in an oak table and spread the silken covers, and laid out all sorts of delicious dishes and refreshing drinks. Never in their lives had the cousin and her daughters seen such a supper, and they were delighted and astonished by it. But the cousin quietly made up her mind to steal the sack, so she called to her daughters, "Go quickly and heat the bathroom. I am sure our guest would like to have a bath before he goes to bed." When the man was safe in the bathroom, she told her daughters to make a sack exactly like his as quickly as possible. Then she changed the 2 sacks and hid the man's sack away. The man enjoyed his bath and slept soundly, and set off early next morning, taking what he believed to be the sack that the crane had given him. On the way home he felt in such good spirits that he sang and whistled as he walked through the wood, and never noticed how the birds were twittering and laughing at him. As soon as he saw his house again, he began to shout from a distance, "Hello, old woman, come out and meet me." His wife screamed back, "You come here, and I'll give you a good thrashing with my poker." The man walked into his house and hung his sack on a nail, and said, as the crane had taught him, "2 out of the sack." But not a soul came out of the sack. Then he said it again, exactly as the crane had taught him, "2 out of the sack." His wife, hearing him chattering goodness knows what, took up her wet broom and swept the ground all about him. The man took flight and rushed off to the field, where he found the crane marching proudly about, and he told him his tale. "Come back to my house," said the crane. And so they went back to the crane's house, and as soon as they got there, what did the crane take down from the wall? Well, he took another sack down and said, "2 out of the sack." And instantly 2 pretty lads sprang out of the sack and brought an oak table on which they laid silken covers and spread all sorts of delicious dishes and refreshing drinks on them. "Take this sack," said the crane. The man thanked him heartily and took the sack, and he went. He had a long way to walk, and he presently got hungry. He said to the sack, as the crane had taught him, "2 out of the sack." And instantly 2 rough men with thick sticks crept out of the bag and began to beat him well, crying as they did so, "Don't boast your cousins of what you've got. 1, 2, or you'll find we'll catch the commonly bought 1, 2. And they beat him until the man panted out, "2 into the sack." The words were hardly out of his mouth when the 2 crept back into the sack. Then the man shouldered his sack and went off straight to his cousin's house. He hung the sack up on a nail and said, "Please have the bathroom heated, cousin." The bathroom heated the cousin, and the man went into it, but he neither washed nor rubbed himself. He just sat there and waited. Meantime, his cousin felt hungry, so she called her daughters. All 4 sat down at the table. Then the mother cried, "Two out of the sack!" Instantly, the two rough men crept out of the sack and began to beat the cousin as she cried, "Greedy pack, thievish pack, 1, 2, give the peasant back his sack, 1, 2." And they went on beating till the woman called to her eldest daughter, "Go and fetch your cousin from the bathroom. Tell him these two ruffians are beating me black and blue." "I'm not finished rubbing myself yet," said the peasant. And the two ruffians kept on beating as they sang, "Greedy pack, thievish pack, 1, 2, give the peasant back his sack, 1, 2." Then the woman sent her second daughter and said, "Quick, quick, get him to come to me." "I'm just washing my head," said the man. Then she sent the youngest girl, and he said, "I'm not done drying myself." And at last the woman could hold out no longer, and sent him the sack she had stolen. Now, he had quite finished his bath, and as he left the bathroom he cried, "Two into the sack!" And the two crept back at once into the sack. Then the man took both sacks, the good one and the bad, and went away home. When he was near the house, he shouted, "Hello, old woman, come and meet me." His wife only screamed out, "You broomstick, come here! You shall pay for this!" The man went into the cottage, hung his sack on the nail, and said, as the crane had taught him, "Two out of the sack!" Instantly, two pretty lads sprang out of the sack and brought in oak tables, laid silken covers on them, and spread them with all sorts of delicious dishes and refreshing drinks. Oh, the woman ate and drank and praised her husband. "Well, now, old man, I won't beat you any more," she said. When they had done eating, the man carried off the good sack and put it away in his storeroom, but hung the bad sack up on the nail. Then he lounged up and down in the yard. Meanwhile, his wife had become thirsty. She looked with longing eyes at the sack, and at last she said, as her husband had done, "Two out of the sack!" And at once the two rogues with their big sticks crept out of the sack and began to belabor her as they sang, "Would you beat your husband true? Don't cry so. Now we'll beat you black and blue. Ho, ho!" The woman screamed out, old man, come here quick! There are two ruffians pummeling me to bit to break my bones!" The husband only strolled up and down and laughed as he said, "They'll beat you well, old lady." And then the two thumped away and sang again, "Blows will hurt, remember, crone. We mean you well, In future leave the stick alone, for how it hurts you now can tell. 1, 2. At last her husband took pity on her and cried, "Two into the sack!" He had hardly said the words before they were back in the sack. From this time the man and his wife lived so happily together that it was a pleasure to see them. And so the story has an end. Oh. Yeah. This should be the violent fairy book. First man convinces the entire town that his wife is crazy. The second man, who was abused for most of the marriage, got both his cousin beaten half to death and his wife beaten half to death, and yet they lived happily ever after. Fairy tales are fun at times. Another good one. Our next story for this fabulous Friday night of fairy tales: The Envious Neighbor. Long, long ago, an old couple lived in a village, and as they had no children to love and care for, they gave all their affection to a little dog. He was a pretty little creature, and instead of growing spoilt and disagreeable and not getting everything he wanted, as even children will do it sometimes, the dog was grateful to them for their kindness and never left their side, whether they were in the house or out of it. One day the old man was working in his garden, with his dog, as usual, close by. The morning was hot, and at last he put down his spade and wiped his wet forehead, noticing as he did so that the animal was snuffling and scratching at a spot a little way off. There was nothing very strange in this, as all dogs are fond of scratching, and he went on quietly with his digging, when the dog ran up to his master, barking loudly and back again to the place where he had been scratching. This he did several times, till the old man wondered what could be the matter, and picking up the spade, followed where the dog led him. The dog was so delighted at his success that he jumped around, barking loudly, till the noise brought the old woman out of the house. Curious to know if the dog had really found something, the husband began to dig, and very soon the spade struck against something. He stooped down and pulled out a large box filled quite full with shining pieces of gold. The box was so heavy that the old woman had to help to carry it home, and you may guess what kind of supper the dog had that night. Now that he had made them rich, they gave him every day all that a dog likes best to eat, and the cushions on which he lay were fit for a prince. The story of the dog and his treasures soon became well known, and a neighbor whose garden was next to the old people's grew so envious of their good luck that he could neither eat nor sleep. As the dog had discovered treasure once, this foolish man thought he must be able to discover one always, and begged the old couple to lend him their pet for a little while, so that he might also be made rich. How can you ask such a thing?" answered the old man indignantly. "You know how much we love him, and he is never out of our sight for 5 minutes." But the envious neighbor would not heed his words, and came daily with the same request, till at last the old people, who could not bear to say no to anyone, promised to lend the dog, just for a night or two. No sooner did the man get a hold of the dog than he turned him into the garden, but the dog did nothing but race around, and the man was forced to wait with what patience he could. The next morning the man opened the house door, and the dog bounded joyfully up into the garden, and running about the foot of a tree, and began to scratch wildly. The man called loudly for his wife to bring a spade, and followed the dog, as he longed to catch the first glimpse of the expected treasure. But when he had dug up the ground, what did he find? Why, nothing but a parcel of old bones, which smelt so badly that he could not stay there a moment longer. And his heart was filled with rage against the dog who had played him this trick, so he seized his pickaxe and killed it on the spot. But before he knew what he was doing, when he remembered that he would have to go with his story to the old man and his wife, he was rather frightened, but there was nothing to be gained by putting it off. So he pulled a very long face and went to his neighbor's garden. "Your dog," he said, pretending to weep, "has suddenly fallen down dead, though I took every care of him and gave him everything he could wish for, and I thought I had better come straight and tell you." Weeping bitterly, the old man went to fetch the body of his favorite and brought it home and buried it under the fig tree where he had found the treasure. From morning till night, he and his wife mourned over their loss, and nothing could comfort them. At length, one night when he was asleep, he dreamt that the dog appeared to him and told him to cut down the fig tree over his grave and to make its wood into a mortar. But when the old man woke and thought of his dream, he did not feel inclined to cut down the tree, which bore well every year, and consulted his wife about it. The woman did not hesitate a moment, and said that after what happened before, the dog's advice must certainly be obeyed. And so the tree was felled, and a beautiful mortar was made from it. When the season came for the rice crop to be gathered, the mortar was taken down from its shelf, and the grains placed in it for the pounding. When lo and behold, in a twinkling of an eye, they all turned into pieces of gold. At the sight of all this gold, the hearts of the old people were glad, and they once more were blessed by their faithful dog. But it was not long before the story also came to the ears of their envious neighbor, and he lost no time in going to the old people and asking if they happened to have a mortar which they could lend him. The old man did not at all like parting with his precious treasure, but as he could never say no, the neighbor went off with the mortar under his arm. The moment he got into his own house, he took a great handful of rice and began to shell off the husks with the help of his wife. But instead of gold pieces for which they looked, the rice turned into berries with such a horrible smell that they were obliged to run away, and after smashing the mortar in a rage and setting fire to the bits. The old people next door were naturally very much put out when they learned the fate of their mortar, and were not at all comforted by the explanations and excuses made by the neighbor. But that night the dog again appeared in a dream to his master and told him that he must go and collect the ashes of the burnt mortar and bring them home. Then, when he heard that the daimyo, a great lord to whom this part of the country belonged, was expected at the capital, he was to carry the ashes to the high road, through which the procession would have to pass. And as soon as it was in sight, he was to climb up on the cherry trees and sprinkle the ashes over them, and they would soon blossom as though they had never blossomed before. This time the old man did not wait to consult his wife as to whether he was to do as the dog had told him. He directly got up and went to the neighbor's house and collected the ashes of the burnt mortar, and he put them carefully into a china vase and carried it to the high road, sitting down on the seat till the daimyo should pass. The cherry trees were bare, for it was the season when small pots were often sold to rich people, who kept them in hot places so that they might blossom early and decorate their rooms. As to the trees in open air, no one would ever think of looking for the tiniest bud for more than a month yet. The old man had not been waiting for very long before he saw a cloud of dust in the far distance, and knew it must be the procession of the daimyo. On they came, every man dressed in his finest clothes, and the crowd that was lining the road bowed their faces to the ground as they went by. Only the old man did not bow himself, and the great lord saw this, and begged one of his courtiers in anger to go and inquire why he had disobeyed the ancient customs. But before the messenger could reach him, the old man climbed to the nearest tree and scattered the ashes far and wide, and in an instant the white flowers had flashed into life, and the heart of the daimyo rejoiced, and he gave rich presents to the old man, whom he sent for to his castle. We may be sure that in a very little while the envious neighbor had heard this also, and his bosom was full with hate. He hastened to the place where he had burned the mortar and collected a few of the ashes which the old man had left behind, and took them to the road, hoping that his luck might be as good as the old man's, or perhaps even better. His heart beat with pleasure when he caught the first glimpses of the daimyo's train, and he held himself ready for the right moment. As the Daimyo drew near, he flung a handful of ashes over the trees. But no buds or flowers followed the action. Instead, the ashes were blown back into the eyes of the Daimyo and his warriors, till they cried out of pain. Then the prince ordered the evildoer to be seized and bound and thrown into prison, where he was kept for many months. By the time he was set free, everybody in his native village had found out his wickedness, and they would not let him live there any longer. And as he would not leave off his evil ways as soon as he went from bad to worse, and he came to a miserable end. Oh. If you couldn't tell, that was a Japanese tale. I should be able to get off at least one more story before I have to run out. I have to get out of my chair and stretch though. And an unredeemed hydrate. I haven't even gotten to the alcohol after that yet. I put lemonade mead in my lemonade. So it'll be interesting. Anyway. Roman tale, okay. Our next fabulous fairy tale for this Friday night. The first one to actually involve an actual fairy. The Fairy of the Dawn. Once upon a time, what should happen did happen, and if it had not happened, this tale would never have been told. There was once an emperor, very great and mighty, and he ruled over an empire so large that no one knew where it began or where it ended. But if nobody could tell the exact extent of his sovereignty, everybody was aware that the emperor's right eye laughed, while his left eye wept. One or two men of valor had the courage to go and ask him the reason for the strange fact, but he only laughed and said nothing, and the reason of this deadly enmity between his two eyes was a secret known only to the monarch himself. Honestly, it sounds like he must have had a stroke. All the while, the emperor's sons were growing up, and such sons! They were like the morning stars in the sky. All the while, the emperor's sons were growing up. Okay, I'll read them. Floria, the eldest, was so tall and broad-shouldered that no man in the kingdom could approach him. Costin, the second, was quite different, smaller stature and slightly built. He had a strong arm and a stronger wrist. No comment. Petru, the third and youngest, was tall and thin, more like a girl than a boy. He spoke very little, but laughed and sang and laughed from morning till night. He was very seldom serious, but then he had a way with thinking and stroking his hair over his forehead, which made him look old enough to sit in his father's council. "You are grown up, Flora," said Petru one day to his oldest brother. "Do go and ask father why one eye laughs and the other weeps." But Florio would not go. He had learned by experience that this question always puts the emperor in a rage. Petru went next to Costin, but did not succeed any better with him. Well, if everyone is afraid, I suppose I must do it myself," observed Petru at length. No sooner said than done. The boy went straight to his father and put on his question. "May you go blind!" exclaimed the emperor in wrath. "What business is it of yours?" and boxed Petru's ears. Peter returned to his brothers and told them that he had befallen him. But not long after, it struck him that his father's left eye seemed to weep less, and his right eye to laugh more. I wonder if it has anything to do with my question, he thought. I'll try again. After all, what do boxes on the air matter? So he put his question for a second time and had the same answer. But the left eye only wept now and then, while the right eye looked 10 years younger. It must really be true, thought Pedro. Now I know what I have to do. I shall go on putting the question, getting boxes on the ears till both eyes laugh together. No sooner said than done. Pedro never forswore himself. Pedro, my dear boy, cried the Emperor, both his eyes laughing together. I see you've got this on the brain. Well, I will let you into my secret. The right eye laughs when I look at my 3 sons and see how strong and handsome you all are, and the other eye weeps because I fear that after I die, you will not be able to keep the Emperor together and protect it from all its enemies. But if you can bring me water from the spring of the Fairy of Dawn to bathe my eyes, then they will laugh forevermore, for I shall know that my sons are brave enough to overcome any foe. Crow! What's up? Let's see, what are we up to? Yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! Cool. So how many people have you sent to the Shadow Realm? Ah, Expedition 33 and Yu-Gi-Oh! Sounds fun. My case of, okay, last game we lost. We're done. Done for the evening. Also, welcome in on the raid too, Yeti. Trying to remember if I had your window open lurking. I lurk on everyone. Yep, I was lurking it. Oh, you know the deal. If you need to do any after stream care, feel free to. Always welcome to lurk because I love telling these stories anyway. I have not yet started drinking alcohol, but it feels like it will be coming pretty soon. Hey, dude, why am I getting messages? Oh. Ads are trying to come in. So I'm not sure how much more of the story I can get them for. Let's see. Info. Yeah, this is a long story, so we're gonna have to hit the ads anyway. Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and get these annoying ads out of the way. I'll leave my mic on though. Congrats on second. I lack kitty cats. Dun, dun, dun. I don't know if either of you have turbo or not, so I'm not sure if you can hear me. Or even what kind of ads are running, because I can't see them. Dun, 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 dun. Oops. Dun, 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 dun. I do wish I could see when my ads are actually going. Dun, 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 dun. Well, the ads are almost over. Seriously. Maybe having it refresh that window every time doesn't do much good because it just plays ads. I need a better fireplace. Welcome back. Anyway, I do hope you guys had a fun game. As I said, if you need to do any after stream aftercare, get a drink, go to the bathroom, raid and run, you are completely allowed to. I would like if you would leave me there. As you know, you guys are always welcome to lurk and just listen and hang out. Of course, it'd be nice if one of my cats would actually show up on camera. Especially with as much of a pain in the butt it is to get that camera set up. playing Master Chief Collection? Nice. I think I have it so anyone can do a shout out. I don't remember. As is, feel free, settle back, relax, listen to some truly screwed up fairy tales. As I can already say that this one sounds like another one that I've already read. But anyway, let's see. Backtrack just a little. But if you can bring me the water from the spring of the Fairy of the Dawn to bathe my eyes, then they will laugh forevermore, for I shall know that my sons are brave enough to overcome any foe. Thus spoke the Emperor, and Pietro picked up his hat and went to find his brothers. The three young men took counsel together and talked the subject well over, as brothers should do. At the end of it was Flora, as the eldest, who went to the stables, chose the best and handsomest horse they contained, saddled him, and then took leave of the court. "I'm starting this at once," he said to his brothers, "and after a year, a month, and a day, and a week, if I have not returned with the water from the spring of the Fairy of the Dawn, then you, Costin, had better come after me." And so saying, he disappeared around the corner of the palace. 3 days and 3 nights he never drew rein. Like a spirit of a horse flew over the mountains and valleys till he came to the borders of the empire. Here was a deep, deep trench, girdled in a whole way around, and there was only a single bridge by which the trench could be crossed. Flora made instantly for the bridge, and there pulled up to look around him once more, to take leave of his native land. Then he turned, but before him was standing a dragon. Oh, such a dragon! A dragon with 3 heads and 3 horrible faces, all with their mouths wide open, one jaw reaching to heaven and the other to earth. At this awful sight, Flora did not wait to give battle. He put spurs to his horse and dashed off. Where he neither knew nor cared. The dragon heaved a sigh and vanished without leaving a trace behind him. Poor dragon. A week went by, and Flora did not return home. 2 passed, and nothing was heard of him. After a month, Costin began to haunt the stables to look out for the horse for himself. At the moment a year, a month, a week, and a day were over, Costin mounted his horse and took leave of his youngest brother. "If I fail, then you come," he said, and followed the path that Flora had taken. The dragon at the bridge was more fearful, and his 3 heads more terrible than before, and the young hero rode away still faster than his brother had done. Nothing more was heard either of him or Flora, and Pietro remained alone. "I must go after my brothers," said Pietro one day to his father. "Go then," said his father, "and may you have better luck than they." And he bade farewell to Pietro, who rode straight towards the borders of the kingdom. The dragon on the bridge was yet more dreadful than the one Flora and Costin had seen, for this one had 7 heads instead of only 3. Pietro stopped for a moment when he caught sight of this terrible creature, and then he found his voice. "Get out of my way!" he cried. "Get out of my way!" He repeated again, as the dragon did not move. "Now get out of the way!" And with the last summons, he drew his sword and rushed upon him. In an instant, the heavens seemed to darken around him, and he was surrounded with fire. Fire to the right of him, fire to the left of him, fire to the front of him, and fire to the rear. Nothing but fire, whichever way he looked, for the dragon's 7 heads were vomiting flame. The horse neighed and reared at the horrible sight, but Pietro could not use the sword he had in his readiness. "Oh, be quiet, this won't do," he said, dismounting hastily, but holding the bridle firm in his left hand and grasping his sword in his right. But even so, he got on no better, for he could see nothing but fire and smoke. "Well, this is no help for it. I must go back and get a better horse," said he, and mounted again and rode homewards. At the gate of the palace his nurse, old Bersha, was waiting for him eagerly. "Oh, Petru, my son, I knew you would have to come back," she cried. "You did not set about the matter properly." "Oh, how ought to I have set about it?" asked Petru, half angrily, half sadly. "Look here, my boy," replied old Berska. "You can never reach the spring of the Fairy of Dawn unless you ride a horse in which your father, the Emperor, rode in his youth. Go and ask where it is to be found, and then mount it and be off with you." Petru thanked her heartily for the advice, and at once went to make enquiries about the horse. "By the light of my eyes," exclaimed the Emperor when Petru had posed the question, "who has told you anything about that? That must have been that old witch of a Bersha. Have you lost your wits? 50 years have passed since I was young, and who knows where the bones of my horse may be rotting, or whether a scrap of his reins still lie in his stall. I have forgotten all about him long ago." Petru turned away in anger, then went back to his old nurse. "Do not be cast down," she said with a smile. "If that is how the affair stands, all will go well. Go and fetch a scrap of the reins, and I shall soon know what must be done." The place was full of saddles, bridles, and bits of leather. Petru picked out the oldest and blackest and most decayed pair of reins and brought them to the old woman, who murmured something over them and sprinkled them with incense and held them out to the young man. "Take the reins," she said, "and strike them violently against the pillars of the house." Petru did what he was told, and scarcely had the reins touched the pillars when something happened. How, I have no idea. He made Petru stare with surprise. A horse stood before him, a horse whose equal in beauty the world had never seen, and a saddle on him of gold and precious stones, and with such a dazzling bridle you hardly dared to look at it, lest you should lose your sight. A splendid horse, a splendid saddle, and a splendid bridle, all ready for the splendid young prince. "Jump on the back of the brown horse," said the old woman, and she turned around and went back into her house. The moment Petru was seated on the horse, he felt his arms 3 times as strong as before, and his heart felt even braver. "Sit firmly on the saddle, my lord, for we have—" Hold on, this is a horse. "Sit down on the saddle, my lord, for we have a long way to go and no time to waste," said the brown horse, and Petru soon saw that they were riding as no man and horse had ever ridden before. On the bridge stood a dragon, but not the same one he had tried to fight with, for this dragon had 12 heads, and each one more hideous and shooting forth more terrible flames than the other. But, horrible though he was, he had met his match. Petru showed no fear, but rolled up his sleeves so that his arms might be free. "Get out of my way," he said when he had done, but the dragon's heads only breathed forth more flames and smoke. Petru wasted no more words, but drew his sword and prepared to throw himself on the bridge. "Stop a moment, be careful, my lord," put in the horse, "and be sure to do as I tell you. Dig your spurs into my body up to the tail. Draw your sword and keep yourself ready, for we shall have to leap over both bridge and dragon. When you see that we are right above the dragon, cut off the biggest head, and wipe the blood off the sword and put it back clean in the sheath before we touch earth again." So Petru dug in his spears, drew his sword, and cut the head and wiped the blood, and put the sword back in the sheath, for the horse's hooves had even touched the ground again. And in this fashion they passed the bridge. "But we've got to go further still," said Petru, after he had taken a farewell glance through his native land. "Yes, forwards," answered the horse. "But you must tell me, my lord, at which speed you wish to go." Like the wind, like thought, like desire, or like a curse. Petru looked about him, up at the heavens and down again to the earth. The desert lay spread out before him, whose aspect made his hair stand on end. We will ride at different speeds, he said. Not so fast as to grow tired, and not so slow as to waste our time. And as they rode, one day like the wind, the next like thoughts, the third and fourth like desire and like a curse, till they reached the borders of the desert. Now, walk so that I may look around and see what I have never seen before, said Petru, rubbing his eyes like one who wakes from a sleep, or like him who beholds something so strange as if it seems that before Petru lay a wood made of copper, with copper trees and copper leaves, and bushes and flowers also of copper. Petru stood and stared as a man does when he sees something that he has never seen before, and of which he has never even heard. Then he rode right into the wood. Each side of the way rows of flowers began to praise Petru, and try to persuade him to pick some of them and make himself a wreath. Take me, for I am lovely and can give you strength to whoever plucks me, said one. Now take me, for whoever wears me in his hat will be loved by the most beautiful woman in the world, pleaded a second. Then one after another bestirred himself, and each more charmed than the last, all promising in soft, sweet voices wonderful things to Petru, if he would only pick them. Petru was not deaf to their persuasion, and was just stooping to pick one when the horse sprang to one side. Why did you stay still? Asked Petru roughly. Do not pick the flowers. It will bring you bad luck, answered the horse. Why should it do that? These flowers are under a curse. Whoever plucks them must fight the Welwa in the woods. What kind of goblin is the Welwa? Oh, do leave in peace, but listen, look at the flowers as much as you like, but pick none. And the horse walked on slowly. Petru knew by experience that he would do well to attend the horse's advice, so he made a great effort and tore his mind away from the flowers. But in vain. If a man is fated to be unlucky, unlucky he will be, whatever he may do. The flowers went on beseeching him till his heart grew ever weaker and weaker. What must come will come, said Petru at length. At any rate, I shall see the well of the woods, what she is like, and which way I had best fight her. If she is ordained to be the cause of my death, then, well, it be so. But if I shall conquer her through your 1,200 Welwas. And once more he stopped and stooped down to gather the flowers. You have done very wrong, said the horse sadly. But it can't be helped now. Get yourself ready to battle, or here's the Welwa. Hardly had done speaking, and scarcely had Petru twisted his wreath, when a soft breeze rose on all sides. And after the breeze came a windstorm, and after the windstorm swelled and swelled until everything around was blotted out in darkness, and darkness overcome them with a thick cloak, while the earth swayed and shook under their feet. Are you afraid? Asked the horse, shaking his mane. Not yet, replied Petru stoutly, though the cold shivers were running down his back. What must come will come, whatever it is. The words were hardly spoken. Don't be afraid, said the horse. I will help you. Take the bridle from my neck and try to catch the Welwa with it. The words were hardly spoken, and Petru had no time even to unbuckle the bridle, when the Welwa herself stood before him, and Petru could not bear to look at her, so horrible she was. She had not exactly a head, yet neither was she without one. She did not fly through the air, but neither did she walk upon the earth. She had a mane like a horse, horns like a deer, face like a bear, eyes like a polecat, while her body had something of each, and that was a Welwa. Petru planted himself firmly in his stirrups and began to lay about him with the sword, but could feel nothing. A night and a day went by, and the fight was still undecided, but at last the Woa began to pant for breath. Let us wait a little and rest, gasped she. Petru stopped and lowered his sword. You must not stop an instant, said the horse, and Petru gathered all his strength and laid about him harder than ever. The Woa gave a neigh like a horse and a howl like a wolf, and threw herself afresh on Petru. For another day and night the battle raged more furiously than before, and Petru grew exhausted, as he could scarcely move his arm. Let us wait a little and rest, cried the Woa for a second time, for I see you are as weary as I am. You must not stop for an instant, said the horse. And Petru kept on fighting, though he barely had the strength to move his arm. But the Woa had ceased to throw herself upon him, and began to deliver her blows cautiously, as if she had no longer the power to strike. On the third day, they were still fighting, but as the morning sky began to redden, Petru somehow managed, how I cannot tell, to throw the bridle over the head of the tired Woa. In a moment, the Woa sprang as a horse, and the most beautiful horse in the world. Sweet be your life, for you have delivered me from my enchantment, said he, and began to rub his nose against his brother's. And he told Petru all his story, and how he had been bewitched for many years. Petru tied the Woa to his own horse and rode on. Where did he ride? I can't really tell you, but he rode on past till he got out of the copper wood. Stay still and let me look about, and see what I never seen before, said Petru again to his horse. For in the front of him stretched a forest that was far more wonderful, as it was made of glistening trees and shining flowers. It was the Silverwood. As before, the flowers began to beg the young man to gather them. Oh, do not pluck them, said warned Woa, trotting beside him, for my brother is 7 times stronger than I. But though Petru had the experience of what this meant, it was no use, and after a moment of hesitation, he began to gather the flowers and twist himself a wreath. Then the storm wind howled louder, and the earth trembled more violently, and night grew darker than the first time. The Woa of the Silver Wood came rushing on with 7 times the speed of the other. For 3 days and 3 nights they fought, but at last Petru caught the bridle over the head of the second Woa. Sweet be your life, you have delivered me from my enchantment, said the second Woa, and they all journeyed on together. But as soon as they came to the Goldwood, far more lovely than the other two, and again Petru's companions pleaded with him to ride through quickly and leave the flowers alone. But Petru turned a deaf ear to all they said, and before he had woven his golden crown, he felt something terrible that he could not see was coming near him right out of the earth. He drew his sword and made himself ready to fight. I will die, he said, or we shall have a bridle over his head. He had hardly said the words when a thick fog wrapped itself around him, and it was so thick that he could not see his own hand, or hear the sound of his own voice. For a day and a night he fought with the sword, without ever once seeing his enemy, and suddenly the fog began to lighten. By the dawn of the second day it had vanished altogether, and the sun shone brightly as in the heavens. It seemed to Petru that he had been born again. And the Woa, she had vanished. You had better take a breath while you can, for the fight will have to begin all over again, said the horse. What was it? It was the Woa, replied the horse, charging into the fog. Listen, she is coming. And Petru had hardly drawn a long breath when he felt something approaching from the side, though he could not tell. A river, yet not a river, for it seemed to not flow over the earth, but to go where it liked and leave no trace of its passage. Woe to be me, cried Petru, frightened at last. "Beware, never stand still," called the brown horse, and more he could not say, for the water was choking him. The battle began anew. For night and day Pichu fought on without knowing at whom or what he struck. At dawn on the second, he felt that his feet were lame. "Oh, now I am done for," he thought, as his blows fell thicker and harder with his desperation. And the sun came out, and the water disappeared, without his knowing how or when. "Take a breath," said the horse, "for you have no time to lose. The well will return in a moment." Petru made no reply, only wondered how, exhausted as he was, he should ever be able to carry on the fight. But he settled himself in his saddle and grasped his sword and waited. And then something came to him. What, I can't tell you. Perhaps in his dreams a man may see a creature which is what he has not got, and what not got was it has. At last, it was what the Welma seemed like to Petru. She flew with her feet and walked with her wings. Her head was on her back, and her tail was on top of her body. Her eyes were like her neck, and her neck was her forehead. How to describe her further, I can't really say. Petru felt for a moment as if his heart was wrapped in a garment of fear. Then he shook himself and took heart, and fought as he had never fought before. As the day wore on, his strength began to fail, and when darkness fell, he could hardly keep his eyes open. By midnight, he knew he was no longer on his horse, but standing on the ground, though he could not have been able to tell how he got there. When the gray light of morning came, he was past standing on his feet, and now fought upon his knees. "Make one more struggle. It is nearly over now," said the horse, seeing Petru's strength was waning fast. Petru swiped the sweat from his brow with his gauntlet. With a desperate effort, he rose to his feet. "Strike the horse on the Welma. Strike the Welma on the mouth with the bridle," said the horse, and Petru did it. The Welma uttered a neigh so loud that Petru thought he would be deaf for life, and then, though she was too nearly spent, flung herself upon her enemy. But Petru was on watch and threw the bridle over her head, then rushed on, so that when the day broke, there were 3 horses trotting alongside him. "May your wife be the most beautiful of women," said the Welma, "for you have delivered me from my enchantment." So the 4 horses galloped fast, and by nightfall they were at the borders of the Golden Forest. Then Petru began to think of the crowns that he wore, and what they had cost him. "After all, what do I want with so many? I will keep the best," he said to himself, taking off first the copper crown and then the silver, and then threw them away. "Stay!" cried the horse. "Don't throw them away. Perhaps we shall find use for them. Get down and pick them up." So Petru got down and picked them up, and they all went on. In the evening, when the sun was getting low and all the midges were beginning to bite, Petru saw a wide heath stretching before him. At the same instant, the horse stood still of itself. "What is the matter?" asked Petru. "I am afraid that something evil will happen to us," answered the horse. "But why should it?" "We are going to enter the kingdom of the goddess Mythwatch, and the further we ride into the colder it shall get. But all along the road there are huge fires, and lest you stop and warm yourself at them." "And why should I not warm myself?" "Something fearful will happen to you if you do," replied the horse sadly. "Well, forward," cried Petru lightly. "If we have got to bear the cold, I must bear it." With every step they went into the kingdom of Midwatch. The air grew colder and more icy, till even the marrow in their bones was frozen. Petru was no coward, and he had gone through what had straightened his powers and endurance, and he stood the test bravely. Along each road on each side were great fires, with men standing in them, who spoke pleasantly to Petru as they went by, and invited him to join them. The breath froze in his mouth, but he took no notice, only bade his horse to ride on faster. How long Petru was waging a battle silently in the cold, one cannot tell, for everybody knows that the kingdom of Mitwatch is not to be crossed in a day. But he struggled on, though the frozen rocks burst around, and though his teeth chattered, and even his eyelids were frozen. Hey, Riley. At length they reached the dwelling of Mitwatch herself. Ouch! And jumping from the horse, Petru threw the reins over the horse's neck and entered the hut. "Good day, little mother," said he. "Very well, thank you, my frozen friend." Petru laughed and waited for her to speak. "You have borne yourself bravely," went the goddess, tapping him on the shoulder. "Now you shall have your reward." And she opened an iron chest, out of which she took a little box. "Look," she said, "this little box has been lying here for ages, waiting for the man who could win his way through the Ice Kingdom. Take it and treasure it, for someday it may help you. If you open it, it will tell you anything you want, and give you news of your fatherland." Petru thanked her gratefully for the gift, and mounted his horse and rode away. When he was some distance from the hut, he opened the casket. "What are your commands?" asked a voice inside. "Give me news of my father," he replied, rather nervously. "He is sitting in council with his nobles," answered the casket. "Is he well?" "Well, not particularly, for he is furiously angry." "What has angered him?" "Your brothers Costin and Floria," replied the casket. "It seems to me that they are trying to rule him and the kingdom as well, and the old man says they are not fit to do it." "Push on, good horse, for we have no time to lose," cried Petru, and he shut the box and put it back in his pocket. They rushed on as fast as ghosts, as whirlwinds, as vampires that hunt in midnight, and how long they rode no one can tell, for the way is far. "Stop! I have some advice to give you," said the horse at last. "Well, what is it?" asked Petru. "You have known what it is to suffer cold. You will have to endure heat, and such you have never dreamed of. Be brave as you now were then. Let no one tempt you to try to cool yourself, or evil will befall you." "Forwards," answered Petru, "and do not worry yourself. If I have escaped without being frozen, there is no chance of my melting." "Why not? This is a heat that will melt the marrow in your bones, a heat that is only to be felt in the kingdom of the goddess of thunder." And it was hot. The very iron in the horse's shoes began to melt. But Petru gave no heed. The sweat ran down from his face, and he dried it with his gauntlet. What heat could be he never knew before, and on the way, not a stone's throw from the road, lay the most delicious valleys, full of shady trees and bubbling streams. When Petru looked at them, his heart burned from within him, and his mouth grew parched. And standing among the flowers were lovely maidens who called him in soft voices till he had to shut his eyes against their spells. "Come, my hero, come and rest. The heat will kill you," they said. Petru shook his head and said nothing, for he had lost the power of speech. Long he rode in this awful state. How long, none can tell. Suddenly the heat seemed to become less, and in the distance he saw a little hut on a hill. This was the dwelling of the goddess of thunder. And when he drew rein at her door, the goddess herself came out to meet him. She welcomed him, kindly invited him in, and bade him tell her all of his adventures. So Pichu told her all that had happened to him, and why he was there, and then took a farewell of her, as he had no time to lose. For, he said, who knows how far the Fairy of the Dawn may be? Stay a moment, for I have a word of advice to give you. You are about to enter the kingdom of Venus. Go and tell her, as a message from me, that I hope she will not tempt you to delay. And on your way back, come to me again, and I will give you something that may be of use to you. So, Peter mounted his horse and had hardly ridden 3 steps when he found himself in a new country. Here he was neither hot nor cold, but the air was warm and soft like spring, though the way ran through the heath covered with sand and thistles. What can that be? Asked Pichu, when he saw a long way off, at the very end of the heath, something resembling a house. That is the house of the goddess Venus, replied the horse, and if we ride hard, we may reach it before dark. And he darted off like an arrow, so that as twilight fell, they found themselves nearing the house. Peter's heart leapt at the sight, for all the way along he had been followed by a crowd of shadowy figures who danced about him from right to left, from front to back, and Peter, though a brave man, now and then felt a thrill of fear. They won't hurt you, said the horse. They are the daughters of the whirlwind, amusing themselves while they are watching for the ogre and the moon. Then he stopped in front of the house, and Peter jumped off and went to the door. Oh, don't be in such a hurry, cried the horse. There are several things I must tell you first. You cannot enter the house of the goddess Venus like that. She is always watched and guarded by the whirlwind. What am I to do then? Take the copper wreath and go with it to the little hill over there. When you reach it, say to yourself, were there ever such lovely maidens, such angels, such fairy souls? And then hold the wreath high in the air and cry, oh, if I knew whether any one of them would accept this wreath from me, if I knew, and throw the wreath from you. And why should I do all this? Said Peter. No questions, but go and do it, replied the horse. And Peter did it. Scarcely had he flung away the copper wreath, and the whirlwind flung himself upon it, and tore it to pieces. Then Peter turned once more to the horse. Stop, cried the horse again. I have other things to tell you. Take the silver wreath and knock at the windows of the goddess Venus, and when she says, Who's there? Answer that you have come on foot and lost your way in the heath. Then she will tell you to go to your way back again, not to stir from the spot. Instead, be sure to say to her, No, indeed, I shall do nothing of the sort. As from my childhood, I have heard stories of the beauty of the goddess Venus, and was not for nothing if I had shoes made of leather with soles of steel, and have travelled for 9 years and 9 months, and have won the battle of the silver wreath, which I hope you may allow me to give you, and have done and suffered everything to be where I am now. This is what you must say. What happens after is your affair. Okay. Pichu asked no more, but went towards the house. By this time it was pitch dark, and there was only a ray of light that streamed through the windows to guide him, and at the sound of his footsteps, 2 dogs began to bark loudly. Which of those dogs is barking? Is he tired of life? Asked the goddess Venus. It is I, O goddess, replied Pichu, rather timidly. I have lost my way on the heath and did not know where I'm to sleep this night. Where did you leave your horse? Asked the goddess sharply. Pichu did not answer. He was not sure if he was to lie or whether he was better tell the truth. Go away, my son. There's no place for you here, she replied, drawing back from the window. Then Pietro repeated hastily what the horse had told him to say, and no sooner had he done so than the goddess opened the window and in gentle tones asked him, "Let me see this wreath, my son." And Pietro held it out to her. "Come into the house," went the goddess. "Do not fear the dogs, they always know my will." And so they did, for as the young man passed, they wagged their tails to him. "Good evening," said Pietro as he entered the house, and seating himself by the fire, listened comfortably to whatever the goddess might choose to talk about, which was, for the most part, the wickedness of men, in whom she was evidently very angry. But Pietro agreed with her in everything, as he had been taught was only polite. But was anybody ever so old as she? I did not know why Petrie devoured her with his eyes, unless it was the count of wrinkles on her face. But if so, he would have had to have 7 lives, and each life 7 times the length of an ordinary one, before he could have reckoned them all up. But Venus was joyful in her heart when she saw Petrie's eyes fixed upon her. "Nothing that was in the world was not a world when I was born," said she. "When I grew up and the world came into being, everyone thought I was the most beautiful girl that ever was seen, though many hated me for it. But every 100 years there came a wrinkle on my face, and now I am old." Then she went on to tell Petrie that she was the daughter of an emperor, and the nearest neighbor was the Fairy of Dawn, with whom she had a violent quarrel, and with that she broke out into loud abuse of her. Petrie did not know what to do. He listened in silence for the most part, but now and then he would just say, "Yes, yes, you must have been treated badly," just for politeness' sake. What more could he do? "I will give you a test to perform, for you are brave, and carry it through," continued Venus when she had talked a long time, and both of them were getting sleepy. "Close to the fairy's house is a well, and whoever drinks from it will blossom again like a rose. Bring me a flagon of it, and I will do anything to prove my gratitude." "It is not easy. No one knows that better than I do. The kingdom is guarded on every side by wild beasts and horrible dragons. But I will tell you more about that, and I also have something to give you." Then she rose and lifted the lid of an iron-bound chest, and took out of it a very tiny flute. "Do you see this?" she asked. "An old man gave it to me when I was young. Whoever listens to this flute goes to sleep, and nothing can wake him. Take it and play it as long as you remain in the kingdom of the Fairy of the Dawn, and you will be safe." At this, Peter told her that he had another task to fulfill as well as the Fairy of the Dawn, and Venus was still better pleased when she heard this tale as well. So Petra bade her good night and put the flute in its case, and laid himself down in the lowest chamber to sleep. Before the dawn he was awake again, and his first care was to give each of his horses so much corn as he could eat, and then lead them to the well to water. Then he dressed himself and made ready to start. "Stop!" cried Venus from the window. "I still have a piece of advice to give you. Leave one of your horses here, and only take 3. Ride slowly till you get to the fairy's kingdom, then dismount and go on foot. When you return, see that all your 3 horses remain on the road while you walk. But above all, beware never to look at the Fairy of Dawn in the face, for she has eyes that will bewitch you, and glances that will befool you. She is hideous, more hideous than anything you ever imagined, with owl's eyes and fox face and cat's claws. Do you hear? Do you hear? Be sure you never look at her." Peter thanked her and managed to get off at last. Far, far away, where the heavens touched the earth, where the stars kissed the flowers, a soft red light was seen, such as the sky sometimes has in the spring, only lovelier, more wonderful. That light was behind the palace of the Fairy of Dawn, and it took Peter 2 days and nights through flowered meadows to reach it. And besides, it was neither hot nor cold, bright nor dark, but something of them all, and Petru did not find a way to step too long. After some time, Petru saw something white rise up from the red of the sky, and when he drew nearer, he saw it was a castle, and so splendid that his eyes were dazzled when they looked at it. He did not know there was such a beautiful castle in the world. But no time was to be lost, so he shook himself and jumped down from his horse, and leaving him on the dewy grass, began to play on his flute as he walked along. He had hardly gone many steps when he stumbled over a huge giant who had been lulled to sleep by the music. This was one of the guards of the castle. As he lay there on his back, he seemed so big that in spite of Petru's haste, he stopped to measure him. The further Petru went on, the more strange and terrible the sights were. Lions and tigers, and dragons with 7 heads, all stretched out in the sun, fast asleep. It was needless to say that the dragons were like, for nowadays everybody knows, and dragons are not things to joke about. Peter ran through them like the wind. Was it haste or fear that threw him on? At last he came to a river, but let nobody think for a moment that his river was like other rivers. Instead of water, there flowed milk, and the bottom was of precious stones and pearls instead of sand and pebbles, and it ran neither fast nor slow, but both fast and slow together. And the river flowed around the castle, and on its banks slept lions with iron teeth and claws, and were beyond the gardens such only the Fairy of the Dawn can have, and on the flowers slept the fairy. All this Petru saw from the other side. But how was he to get over? To be sure, there was a bridge, but even if he had not been guarded by sleeping lions, it was painfully not meant for a man to walk on. Who could tell what it was made of? It looked like soft, woolly clouds. So he stood thinking what was to be done, for across he must go. After a while, he determined to take the risk, and strode back to the sleeping giant. "Wake up, my brave man," he cried, giving him a shake. The giant woke and stretched out his hand to pick up Petru, just as he should catch a fly. Petru played on his flute, and the giant fell back again. Petru tried this 3 times, and when he was satisfied that the giant was really in his power, he took out a handkerchief and bound the 2 fingers of the giant together, and drew a sword, and cried for the 4th time, "Wake up, brave man!" When the giant saw the trick which had been played on him, he said to Petru, "You call this a fair fight? Fight according to rules if you really are a hero." "I will by and by, but first I want to ask you a question. Will you swear that you will carry me over the river if I fight honorably with you?" And the giant swore. When his hands were freed, the giant flung himself upon Petru, hoping to crush him by his weight, but he had met his match. It was not yesterday nor the day before that Petru had fought his first battle, and he bore himself bravely. For 3 days and 3 nights the battle raged, and sometimes one had the upper hand, and sometimes the other, till at length they both lay struggled on the ground, but Petru was on top, and with the point of his sword at the giant's throat. Let me go, he shrieked. "I am on my unbeaten." "Will you take me over the river?" asked Petru. "I will," gasped the giant. "What shall I do if you break your word?" "Kill me any way you like, but let me live now." "Very well," said Petru, and he bound the giant's left hand to his right foot, tied one handkerchief around his mouth to prevent him from crying out, and another around his eyes, and led him to the river. Once they had reached the bank, he stretched one leg over to the other side, and catching at Petru in the palm of his hand, set him down on the further shore. "That's all right," said Petru. Then he played a few notes of his flute, and the giant went to sleep again. Even the fairies who had been bathing a little lower had heard the music and fell down asleep among the flowers on the bank. Peter saw them as he passed and thought, if they are so beautiful, why should the Fairy of Dawn be so ugly? But he dared not linger, and he pushed on. And now he was in the wonderful gardens, which seemed more wonderful than they had been from afar. But Peter could see no faded flowers, nor any birds, as he hastened through them to the castle. No one was there to bar his way, for they were all asleep. Even the leaves had ceased to move. He passed through the courtyard and entered the castle itself. What he beheld there need not be told, for all the world knows that the palace of the Fairy of the Dawn is no ordinary place. Gold and precious stones were as common as wood with us, and the stables where the horses of the sun were kept were more splendid than the palace of the greatest emperor in the world. Petru went up the stairs and walked quickly through 48 rooms, hung with silken stuffs and all empty. In the 49th he found the Fairy of the Dawn herself. In the middle of this room, which was as large as a church, Peter saw the celebrated well that he had come far to seek. It was a well just like other wells, and it seemed strange that the Fairy of the Dawn should have it in her own chamber. But anyone could tell it had been there for hundreds of years. And by the well slept the Fairy of the Dawn herself. And as Peter looked at her, the magic flute dropped by his side, and he held his breath. Near the well was a table on which stood bread made with doe's milk and a flagon of wine. And it was the bread of strength and the wine of youth, and Peter longed for them. He looked once at the bread and once at the wine, and then at the Fairy of the Dawn, still sleeping on her silken cushions. As he looked, a mist came over his senses. The fairy opened her eyes slowly and looked at Petru, who lost his head still further, and just managed to remember his flute, and a few notes of it sent the fairy to sleep again. And he kissed her thrice. Then he stooped and laid his golden wreath upon her forehead, and ate a piece of the bread, and drank a cupful of the wine of youth, and this he did 3 times over. Then he filled the flask with the water from the well, and vanished swiftly. As he passed through the garden, it seemed quite different from it was before. The flowers were lovelier, and the streams were quicker, and the sunbeams shone brighter, and the fairies seemed gayer. And all of this had been caused by the 3 kisses Peter had given to the Fairy of the Dawn. He passed everything safely by, and was soon seated in his saddle again, and faster than the wind, faster than thought, faster than longing, faster than hatred, rode Petru. At length he dismounted, and leaving his horses at the roadside, he went on foot to the house of Venus. The goddess Venus knew that he was coming, and went to meet him, bearing with her white bread and red wine. "Welcome back, my prince," said she. "Good day, and many thanks," replied the young man, holding out the flask containing the magic water. She received it with joy, and after a short rest, Peter set forth, for he had no time to lose. He stopped a few minutes, as he had promised, with the goddess of thunder, and was taking a hasty farewell of her when she called him back. "Stay, I have a warning to give you," she said. "Beware of your life, make friends with no man, do not ride fast, or let the water go out of your hand. Believe no one, and flee flattering tongues. Go and take care, for the way is long and the world is bad, and you hold something very precious. But I will give you this cloth to help you. It is not much to look at, but it is enchanted, and whoever carries it will never be struck by lightning, pierced by a lance, or smitten with a sword. And the arrows will glance off his body." Peter thanked her and rode off, and taking out his treasure box, inquired how many matters were going at home. "Not well," it said. "The emperor was blind altogether now, and Flora and Costin had besought him to give the government of the kingdom into their hands. But he would not, saying that he did not mean to resign the government till he had washed his eyes from the well of the Fairy of the Dawn." Then the brothers had gone to consult old Bershka, who told them that Petru was already on his way home bearing the water. They had set out to meet him and would try to take the magical water from him, and then claim as the reward the government of the Emperor. "You are lying!" cried Petru, throwing the box on the ground, where it broke into 1,000 pieces. It was not long before he began to catch a glimpse of the native land, and as he drew near the rain, to better look at it, he was still gazing when he heard a sound in the distance of someone that was calling him by name. "Ew, Petru!" it said. On!" cried the horse. "It will fare you ill if you stop." "No, let us stop and see who it is and what it is," answered Petru, turning the horse around and coming face to face with his two brothers. He had forgotten the warning given to him by the goddess of thunder, and when Costin and Forrest drew near with the soft and flattering words, he jumped straight off his horse and rushed to embrace them. He had 1,000 questions to ask and 1,000 things to tell, but his brown horse stood sadly hanging his head. "Petru, my dear brother," at length said Flora, "would it not be better if we carried the water for you? Someone ought to try to take it from you on the road, and no one would suspect us." "So it would," added Costas. "Flora speaks well." But Petru shook his head and told him that the goddess of thunder had said, and about the cloth she had given him. And both brothers understood there was only one way in which they could kill him. At a stone's throw from where they stood ran a rushing stream with deep, clear pools. "Don't you feel thirsty, Costin?" asked Flora, winking at him. "Yes," replied Costin, understanding directly what was wanted. "Come, Petru, let us drink now when we have the chance, so we will be well set out on your way home. It's a good thing you have us with you. We can protect you from harm." The horse neighed, and Petru knew what it meant, and he did not go with his brothers. No, he went home to his father and cured his blindness, and as for his brothers, they never returned again. And that story was a lot longer than I expected. And it is already almost time to end. Dang. Isn't that been a day? Excuse me. So, fairy tales. Lots of murder. Lots of mystery. Lots of people lying to people. And only one of those stories was German. But it is getting late, and we should find someone to raid. So, if anyone here has a suggestion, I will listen to it. But I will also look about some myself. Ouch. I don't think any of my normal reading streamers are still going at the moment. Again, I'll have to check. Let's see. Oh, wait. Do you want to hear more fairy tales? Because I'm not the only one reading fairy tales on Fridays. Though, I'm not sure if he's allowing raids, because some people tend to limit raids to certain numbers of people. So I will pull him up, and if it doesn't work, he'll go raid Dusk. Sound good?
Town where the shadows play, there's a little bookshop tucked away. During the day he wears a human face, a wolf from the lore in a cozy space.
Nope, he won't let me read, so we're reading Dusk.
Story whispers secrets almost like a prayer with every page turned. A world comes alive.
I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and don't forget, tomorrow night we are gaming over on Papa Penguin's channel. Oh, I hope you all have a wonderful night, and pleasant dreams.
Where the stories unfold, he speaks of magic, of legends untold. When the sun goes down and the stars ignite, he drops the disguise and sighs with delight. Downstairs in his lair, in the warm glowing light, he gathers his friends for tales of the night. With a cup of tea and a heart full of glee, he weaves the enchantment, sets their spirits free. From princes and dragons to wishes and dreams, he breathes life into stories, or so it seems.